It's Hoodoo TV, and we are with Frank Gogol, man. How you doing, dude?
Dude, I'm doing all right. Is that a new intro?
It is a new one, man. I recently just got that put up. So
that's pretty legit. It's legit.
Yeah.
I like that. Dude, it's 2020. Everything's fucking amazing. Oh my God, what a year.
It's a beautiful year.
I have this nightmare that midnight's going to hit on December 31st and it's just going to become December 32nd. It's just terrible.
It's been a rocky year, to say the least, as far as like social and health and things like that, man. But you just coming off no heroin, and that did pretty well. How did no heroin do?
Yeah, I'm detoxing from that right now. That's a bad joke. All things considered, like I'm pretty happy with no heroin. Like, so the book solicited back in April, which was the last catalog to come out before comic shops shut down, and there was like a lot of worry about like whether the book was going to come out, when it was going to come out, if it was going to come out this year, if comic shops were going to come back, and I'll put it this way. So when I do a book, I always set kind of like goals for myself, like really things that I can't really affect. Like I wanted to double the number of pre-orders on No Heroin, or with No Heroin #1. I wanted to do double with Dead End Kids last year, which is like a goal you can't really drive at, but you can do things to try and reach there eventually. But it's just kind of like it's a made up number to work towards, and that's the attitude I was going with. I was like, we're going to do double, and then COVID hit and like comic shops are still open, and I was like, okay, maybe not double, but we'll get a lot, hopefully. And then like as time went on, like the managed expectations just got more and more managed, and eventually I was like, oh my God, this book's never going to come out. this is dire. But I'm happy to report that the book did come out. It ended up only being delayed 1 week, which is like insanely that's impressive to me, like that everything was able to kind of like bounce back enough so quickly that like we had books on the shelf. And we did more than double on the pre-orders. We did like 100 and 220% or something like that. So like, yeah, good, solid. Like, I mean, that it was one of the first books to come out after shops like opened up like en masse, and like the pre-orders were really strong. They were probably stronger than they would have been because we were able to really connect with a lot of retailers during the shutdown. But like that was to me like a big sign that like, okay, maybe things will get better. It looks more positive today than it did a week ago, kind of thing.
That's good to hear that it had such success as far as that. And your marketing program came out a lot different because you were hitting con after con after con for Dead End Kids, the first run of Dead End, the first volume of Dead End Kids. Yeah.
In-person stuff was a huge component of driving the first or Dead End Kids. I did 20 cons last year. Most of them fell either before or during when the book was coming out. I did 22 store signings in states that weren't California. So like, up on a Saturday morning on a plane, flying to Oregon or Texas or wherever, doing 2 signings back to back and hopping on a plane, coming home kind of thing. Did 22 of those. And that was a big part of it. And all that was off the table this year. Like I did 2 cons before the book was solicited. So I couldn't even really talk about the book. And then, here we are still stuck in the house 8 months later. I definitely had to pivot and kind of find new creative ways to do things, kind of find ways to do more of stuff that I had done before that wasn't in person. And you know what? It's kind of, it's Jeff Goldblum, Jurassic Park, life finds a way kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It sure does, man. And it changes, right? And so being adaptive and moving to that is a good thing, to be flexible. And then I believe No Heroin's trade is up for pre-order right now as well, right?
Yeah. So we're talking, I guess this is live. So it's going to be November. It's in the November catalog. It's soliciting the whole series. A lot of people ended up missing out on the series because they didn't know to pre-order, even though they were doubles. There were still lots of people who didn't pre-order or didn't know to pre-order. So now's a second chance to check that out. It's $10. I really work hard to make all my trades really affordable and bang for your buck. So it's the whole series, tons of extras. I mean, if anyone who's paying attention, like there were like 25 different covers. There's a huge cover gallery in the back. There's an essay, it's all kinds of cool stuff. And it's like I said, $10. All my books are $10 or less in collected edition because I don't think the barrier to entry for a single story of comics should be $20 or $25. Like it's not what people are built to pay for something that doesn't last for very long.
Right. And you got to earn that trust of the story too, I believe. So I think that's a fair price to do, earning the trust of the story.
Yeah, it's cheaper than buying the single issues. Like, so it's, that's a deal to me.
Yep. Sure is, dude. And so you produced No Heroine during this time, and now there's another book coming. So what are you doing different marketing this new one, Dead End Kids, The Suburban Job?
So I learned a lot of lessons doing No Heroine, kind of in a vacuum, in a at-home setting. In a lot of ways, like I've been able to take advantage of the pandemic situation, being stuck in the house, not having to commute to work, and being able to work from home has let me be more flexible. And I've tried to take advantage of the time and do things like connect with more retailers, kind of build my Facebook profile out into kind of like a pre-order managing engine in that way. Like, it's not friends and family anymore. It's retailers and fans and collaborators and stuff like that. And like, it's, that's sort of something I've been working at towards this year, and kind of just trying to find things that are creative and just new uses for old things that that I'm using in a new way. And it's been really successful. Like I've connected with probably about 500 retailers. I think there are only 1,800 in the world. So like I've got a decent chunk of them who know me personally now. And then other ones who ordered Dead End Kids and No Heroine and saw how it did in their stores. And, I'm on their radar in a different way. But so it's sort of just kind of building out my own little dashboards in little ways, using Facebook as a dashboard and having it, Google Sheets be a way to track things, and like just trying to be smart and kind of calculated about it. But also kind of relying on the benefit of this book is it's a sequel to a book that did really well. Whereas the Heroine was kind of a fresh start, new series, like nobody knew what to make of it. So coming into the second series of Dead End Kids, I think we've got some goodwill that we can kind of depend on, and maybe we can do a little bit less outreach for retailers and try and find some new ways to do some other stuff. I'm always looking to do more of what I've done before, but also new stuff and find easier ways to kind of keep things going and scaling up and try to, like I said, be smart and efficient about it.
Nice. And like you said, this is kind of, you had Dead End Kids that was last year, I believe, and now we got Dead End Kids, The Suburban Job, technically 2 years later, I guess, 2021. Is this going to be building off the original story, or is it still going to have some continuity standalone? What are you hoping to accomplish with it?
So when SourcePoint came and asked me if I wanted to do more, it was between issues 1 and 2 coming out last year. And I was just wiped. Like I was like out of the fire and into the frying pan kind of thing, with the book being so big and me never having had any miniseries before. Like I was constantly on the phone with retailers and traveling a lot, like I was talking about. So like I was burnt out. And like, it makes me sound really ungrateful. The book was this huge success and here I am bitching about it. But that's the truth. Like it was exhausting, and I was planning a wedding at the same time. Like it was 2019 was a long year. So when SourcePoint said, do you want to do more? I was like, maybe. Like I didn't want to close the door, but I didn't have an idea. Anyone who read the first series knows like it ends with like a pretty strong exclamation point on that story. So it would be hard to kind of do something with those kids without kind of maybe taking away from that ending. And I just had to have the right story. Like I didn't have one. So after things calmed down in the late fall and winter last year, I got to spend a little time thinking about it. And one thing that happened was I watched True Detective season 3. I had been a big fan of the first one. I passed on the second one just because, not because I thought it'd be bad, but because it didn't seem to have as great a reception. And I just have to be really picky with how I spend 10 hours of my time. So I passed on the second one, but I like Marshall Ali a lot. And I was, so I came back for the third one. And it got me thinking about the format of that show. It's like, it's a new cast in a new place, new era, sort of new crime angle. But like it looked and felt like a True Detective show. Like you could watch any 2 episodes of either one of those seasons and you could probably, within a shadow of a doubt, be like, oh yeah, those are definitely the same people making it, right? It's the same feel, same look. And I kind of like that. And I was like, okay, that's a way into more Dead End Kids, right? Like it can look and feel the same, get the team back together, get Nanad back and Chris on covers and like, build something that looks and feels and drives the same, but is still its own thing. New cast, new setting, sort of new angle for the crime story, and that really felt like a fresh way to do a sequel that didn't ruin the first one if we totally botched the job, but also could stand on its own and also be really good unto itself. So it's not really connected to the first one, except for, I'm writing it. If you read the first one, you'll recognize my writing style and Nanad's art and Sean's incredible lettering and everything. But we also did some things that are, its own thing. Like in the first volume, we didn't do any panel borders. In this volume, we have panel borders. It's like a really small change, but it's a small thing you could do to kind of lend some selfness to this volume. The covers are very similar. We got the classic, I can say classic now, white stripe with the Dead End Kids logo flush left, and the sort of really solid color with the gray figures. But we were a little looser with how we did the colors. In the first series, like it was pretty strict, like yellow, red, blue. On these covers, there are different shades and other colors kind of come in small bits. And like it's a small thing, maybe no one will notice, but it still gives it its own sense. Also, this set of covers does something unique for this series when you kind of have all of them. It's not connecting or anything like that, but there's a theme across all of them that kind of makes sense once you hit the fourth one. So like it was looking for ways to let it be familiar and comfortable, but also be kind of jarring and new and different. There's also because it's a sequel, but also not like a direct sequel, there's like a lot of fun stuff that I did writing it, kind of like little meta commentaries in there and kind of taking things people would expect in the, in a second version of something and kind of turning them on their heads. Like, how about I give the pitch so we can
let's hear it.
Talk about it in better detail. So for anyone who didn't read the first book, Dead End Kids is the story of three kids in 1999 who are all sort of struggling with things at home, just different kind of familial problems, sort of standard broken home kids. And it's about them trying to solve their friend's murder. So think like Stand By Me meets the Hardy Boys, but darker and more violent. And it really is the story about these kids who are a really tight-knit group of kids who take care of one another and sort of what happens to the dynamic when one of them is murdered. The Suburban Job, by contrast, is the story of three kids in 2008 who are all the survivors or loved ones of people who died on or because 9/11. So it's three new kids. Tori, who is the daughter of a first responder who died on the scene on September 12th on Ground Zero. Brian, who is the brother of a soldier who's killed in Afghanistan a few years after 9/11. And Amna, who's a young Pakistani American woman who is dealing with sort of the post 9/11 exacerbated racial tensions kind of that we still see to this day.
Right.
So these are kids. They're dealing with all kinds of different issues focused around the sort of ripple effect of 9/11. But the difference here is that they were friends, and then their worlds just drastically changed, and they grew apart over time. And now, rather than being this tight-knit group of kids, they're sort of suffering in isolation and don't have other people to rely on. And there's a level of antagonism between them even. So it's kind of taking that formula from the first one and kind of turning it over a little bit to look at it from a different way. But it's still three kids dealing with a crime story, and they all have bullshit going on at home, and it's the same but new. And that's kind of like the mission statement of the whole book. There's a line of dialogue or narration in the first issue that like literally states like, this isn't that story, which is a callback to that same narration in the first book. So it's just like, I had a lot of fun doing cheesy shit like that, but I think to really good effect, honestly.
Yeah. And I think after reading your stuff, I get that hearing your voice in it, it's great. When you do this though, what do you feel like one of the hardest scenes to write is when you're touching on something so like, touchy as 9/11?
There's a splash page in the first issue on the second page of sort of a snapshot of the Twin Towers on 9/11, which, splash pages are not easy or hard to write, but they're easier to write than regular pages because you're writing one panel, right? But it's got to be a big emotional panel. I honestly, I wrote that panel on that page a couple dozen times, but honestly, like eventually pared back to like a really simple version of it. It just says, a shot of the Twin Towers on 9/11, like period. And that's what I gave Nanad, and I gave him, I think, one photo reference link, and like really let him kind of decide what got on the page. And like what he put there is it's pretty brilliant. Like, I mean, like using the fact that we read top to bottom, like the order of information on that page, seeing like the horror of it building to eventually when you see the people on the ground level, it's a really effective page. And it really juxtaposes really well against the page before it, which is kind of the cinematic, really calm, encapsulating childhood scene, sort of similar to the first page of Dead End Kids Volume 1. And like just those two pages next to each other are really, to me, really effective. And then after that, you've got like a chase scene set in the present that feels like it's straight out of a Sean Phillips book. Like, I mean, like the first 4 or 5 pages of the book could be from like 3 different books. It's crazy.
That's awesome. And so what was the differences you had with writing Dead End Kids 1? Was the process different? Anything like that?
I mean, like in a way that makes sense. Yes. Like it's been 2.5 years since I wrote Dead End Kids, the first volume. So like I've grown and evolved my process as a writer. So I've got sort of more tricks up my sleeve and more things that I do as a writer to kind of steady the ship and build out stories. So like in that sense, there's lots of differences. But honestly, the big difference for me is when I wrote the first volume, I don't remember having fun writing it. Like, not that I had a miserable time writing it. I was like sitting there like struggling at the keyboard to get it out. Like it came out easily. I think I wrote the first draft in 8 days. And like I liked the story and like I have no qualms about it, but it wasn't like an enlightened, like I didn't laugh at myself when I was writing it. When I was writing this book, like writing some of the dialogue exchanges between the characters, like I laughed out loud at myself. And like I just remember this experience being a little more joyful, even though the subject matter is maybe arguably darker.
Yep.
Like one of the characters, Brian, he's the book takes place in northern New Jersey, so he's 2008. He's got that Jersey Shore vibe. He was a little bit of a Guido, and like just some of the stuff that some of the characters say to him about his hair and like going tanning and shit like that. Like it just was fun.
That's awesome. And then that kind of leads to the next one. Is there things you hide in your books? You know what I mean? That are kind of just those little bitty hidden, Easter eggs that people may or may not see, or.
I can tell you that I absolutely do not, but
Okay.
artistic collaborators seem to love doing it. And this goes all the way back to Grief.
Yeah.
Nanad drew me into a funeral scene in one of the stories in Grief and never told me until like a year and a half ago. And I looked at that page and I definitely see it now. Like I can't unsee it. So he might even be lying. He might not have done it on purpose, but he told me and now it's ingrained in my brain.
That looks just like you, dude.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then when Chris did No Heroin, there are all kinds of little Easter eggs in No Heroin. Like towards the end of the first issue, there's a poster in the house. It's the cover of Dead End Kids 2. There's a park bench, like a picnic table in one of the scenes where it's got like SPP for Source Point Press carved into it. It's got a little dove carved into it, like for Grief. I mean, so my collaborators definitely like to do stuff like that. And there's definitely one, and it's escaped me now, but Nanad drew some stuff into this volume of Dead End Kids to call back to No Heroin. So like it's this weird like layered universe of like self-referentiality at this point.
I appreciate they do that, so I think it's fun. And so it seems like you like to write, a lot of your stories are centered around late teenagers, young adults. I mean, is that just where you feel the most comfortable writing, that the most stories come out, or what's your view on that?
Honestly, I think that is circumstantial and not necessarily something I tried to do. So Dead End Kids obviously had to be kids, and that was sort of my first mainstream indie book. Then going on to No Heroin, like I wanted with that book to do a Buffy-esque book. I'm a big Buffy fan, big Joss Whedon fan, and I wanted to sort of do my take on that. So like, kind of by design and through homage, Kayla ended up being, an 18, 19, 20-year-old young woman. And then the follow-up book to that was Dead End Kids 2, Dead End Kids, a Suburban Job. So like it was back to a cast of kids. And so that's just kind of how the cookie crumbled. The book that I have coming up next from Source Point that's not announced and it won't be for a while is a full cast of adults. So it's not something I'm trying to do. I have 2 one-shots that are kind of sitting, waiting for something to happen with them. And one is about a kid and one's about an adult. So like I'd say that it's not something I actively try to do, but I think subconsciously I'm always auditioning for the writer job in Power Rangers. So like maybe I'll just keep writing teenagers until they let me.
It's like, please let me have it one day. Yeah, and how this question I always kind of get most writers to talk to, and it's an interesting because everybody has a different way of doing it. How do you come up with the names of your characters?
It's really hard. Like the two things that I struggle most with as a writer are character names and sound effects. Like I'll be here in my office writing and I'll write 10 pages of script. And like the last thing I need to do is figure out a sound effect. And I'll be like knocking on the wall, trying to like hear it. And I'm very tone deaf. Like I'm very monotone in the way I speak. Like I'm not musically inclined, like, with vocals or anything. And I can't do it. Like outside of like the real obvious ones, like I need to like keep a Google spreadsheet like of options for myself to refer back to, and I just haven't built that yet. So naming characters is about as equally hard. I tend to do them kind of as like inside jokes with myself. Like the character Brian, who's the brother of the soldier who died in Afghanistan, is named after my friend Brian, whose brother died in Iraq. So like I didn't have to come up with that name. Like I kind of from my own life. It's really hard. Like I usually end up with like 4 characters who all have the same first letter in their name. And that's like a big no-no because you want your characters to be like really able to be told apart.
Right.
So like in the first draft of the first Dead End Kids, like 4 people were named like Mike or something Mark, and I had to go back and like, well, you're not going to be able to tell Avery apart from Bulmer if they don't have the same name. So I named Bulmer.
You gotta love Tank though.
Yeah, no, I mean Tank was the name that I came up with that I was most proud of. I was like, this dude's he's the most lovable, nice person, and he's gigantic. So calling him Tank is like ironic and appropriate. And like I what it is, I think too hard about it.
Yeah.
The titles of the books are like equally hard for me to come up with, and like I don't settle on something until like it's got like a double or triple entendre to it, and like it really, really makes sense to me. No heroin. It's about a person who's a recovering drug addict, but she's also a really bad hero.
Oh man. And so, you said you had something fit Source Point Press. You can't really tell me about. I mean, how many unpublished or half finished books do you currently have, waiting right now?
So I've got 2 one-shots that I mentioned. Something that's between like a one-shot and like a triple-sized issue that. And all 3 of those are things that are done. They're lettered. They've been written for a while, and they're like I'm just kind of looking for the right avenue for them. Like, Source Point has offered to print a couple of them, and that was fine. Like I didn't want to prioritize a one shot over like a mini series or something because like just in terms of career goals and whatnot, like the traction on a one shot and the effort that goes into marketing an issue of a comic it's like you got to kind of pick and choose and like looking for like when do I have a month to do a Kickstarter or something like that. So, but I've got those 3. I've got pitches with 2 bigger companies that I can't really say anything about yet because they're kind of like in flux. But I can say that of those 3 pitches, one has one of them, the other has 2 of them, and they were all asked of me. Like they reached out to me to ask for them, which was pretty cool. And that was because Dead End Kids and No Heroin did very well, and it got me some notice, which was very cool. And then I've got a Source Point project that I mentioned. So I've got things going. One of the things I'm most proud of is that I haven't kind of ever let anything fall to the wayside. Like I've never created something and like nobody wanted it, and I had to kind of like put it in a drawer and forget about it. And I don't know that that's because the books are good, but it's mostly because I won't give up on them. Yes. So I mean, there's probably another couple of years worth of stuff sitting waiting, and I'm working on other stuff like as time goes on. I have probably the next 5 years of my writing planned out, and I'm overwhelmed by the fact that I need to finish it all.
It's a good problem to have, though, Frank. Good problems.
I'm not complaining.
Good problems, man. And so when you're writing, basically, especially on this Suburban Job here, what is there something you learned about yourself when you're writing in these stories, humanity, ethics, morale, anything like that?
I having written a second volume of Dead End Kids, I realized that I really fucking hate kids. Like it's obviously I just keep killing them. No. I mean, I think so. One of the things that I said to myself when I first started writing, almost 5 years ago now, was that like there was a certain type of writer I wanted to be, a certain type of creator I wanted to be. And I kind of made these pillars for myself, like these sort of North Stars. And one of them was like that I would always write about things that matter, like to me. I read a lot of comics, and a lot of them just feel a little bit empty to me. Like they're cool. There's lots of action. Like it's I can definitely see it being a movie or a TV show, but like it didn't really shine a light on anything substantial or have something to say. And like there's nothing wrong with that. Like I mean, Transformers made $1 billion for a reason. Like there's market and audience for those kinds of stories. I love Transformers. I think it's fun, but it's not the kind of things I'm interested in doing. And like having put out a volume of work now that's 4 miniseries if you count the unannounced thing, and a short story collection, and this, that, and the other thing. Like I can look back on a volume of work now and see like I've stuck to the roadmap. Every book I feel is about something that's important to me, and it has something to say, and shines a light on this thing, whether it's addiction or childhood trauma that needs to be talked about more.
Nice, because I've heard people ask the question: is it better to give somebody what they want, or to be original, or to me there's that alternative option of writing what you would want to read.
Well, that's exactly it. Last night I did a seminar class with Scott Snyder. Just random that this happened last night.
Yeah.
And it was me and only 3 other people, so it was pretty intimate, for lack of a better word, but it was close quarters and pretty essentially individualized attention. And one of the things Scott said, he's like, even if you get to work in corporate comics someday, you write Batman like I do, you should still be writing the stories you want to see, because like that's the only way you're going to tell stories that you love and that you care about. And he's 100% right. And like that's I think that's true for me. It's true for Scott. And I think that I think you can tell when a writer is interested in one thing or the other. And like, again, there's nothing wrong with it, but it depends on what you want to look back on your body of work and think about it, right? Like there are people out there who put out 5 or 6 series a year, and maybe they're just kind of riffs on existing ideas. I'm not going to name names because I know these people and I like them.
Right.
But that I wouldn't look back on something like that and feel like I spent my time the best I could. Yeah.
And how much did you guys kind of swear off editors within that within that mindset?
I've been lucky that I've never had to work with an editor because somebody told me to.
Right.
And the editors I've worked with, it's been more in like a story notes capacity, like on Grief. I worked with Molly Laser and Mark Sumrak, who Mark's done some stuff for Marvel. But they were really like, it wasn't on every story. And like, it was like just general notes. It wasn't somebody guiding production or anything like that. So it was really a lot me. Like I learned a lot doing that. And then on Dead End Kids, it was kind of the same situation, but with Paul Aller, who's who's doing G.I. Joe at IDW, is a buddy of mine. He helped me kind of break out the story and revise and make sure that it was a good version of itself. But it wasn't really like a true editorship. Like I gave him editor credit because I wanted to give credit where it's due.
Right.
But then No Heroine had no editor, and Dead End Kids 2 has no editor. The next book has no editor. But that said, I've been developing pitches with editors at, I almost said the publisher, this year. And that experience is it's been a lot different than I expected. Like I think editors get a bad rap for being like these people who, can't write but want you to tell their stories, which is so far. I'm sure those people exist, but by and large, I think that most editors are really interested in helping people find the best version of their stories. And that's 100% been my experience. Like the experience was, me bringing a version of the pitch to the table and being asked thought-provoking questions about, how I felt about this thing. And if there's maybe a way to do this, but in a bigger way or a smaller way. And like nothing about that experience was negative, and it was all like a growing. Like I have a new set of questions I ask myself when I create stories now that I took from that process. And I think I make better stories because of it. So, I don't work with a lot of editors. I think that that's my style. But I think the editors are really great at what they do.
Power Ranger gig's gonna have an editor, man.
Yeah. I know who those editors would be, and believe me, I hope they notice me.
Sign this guy. Get him on the book, man. Let him work. So,
a scene, like one scene.
It's just a mini. Come on, just free comic book day. Give it to him. maybe outside of Power Rangers, what genre of book have you wanted to kind of explore to down the road?
Honest to God, like I think my creator-owned stuff really has and will touch on a lot of like the genres that are not superheroes. So like I'm kind of interested in like, if I'm going to do freelance, it's Marvel, DC. Like I want to do a superhero book. Like I'm a superhero guy. Like that's what brought me into the genre, and like I still read and enjoy Avengers and Fantastic Four, and those are the majority of what I read. So I definitely want to do that. I have like some characters in mind that I'd love to tackle, and some pitches for characters that I think are awesome, and they should definitely let me talk about them to them via email or Zoom or whatever works for them. But
look in the camera, talk to them directly. And so, I mean, that's one of the questions that ask is, other than Power Rangers, what ideal work for hire would you want to go with?
If I had to say, like, I'm definitely a Marvel guy over DC guy. Like, nothing against DC. I think DC's got the better universe, like in terms of like events and like the thought out structure of everything. Like, I'll give it to them. And Batman is obviously incredible. Nobody's going to argue that. But the Marvel characters were like my first love, and like I spent my early years like on Wikipedia learning everything I could about them. So like I feel like really invested in Marvel. Also, my favorite characters and franchises, like Fantastic Four is my favorite franchise ever. Hawkeye's my favorite character. Iron Fist and Black Panther I have a ton of love for. I have pitches for all of them if any of their editors are watching. But I've got a pretty good Dark Avengers pitch that I want to pitch someday. So that's just where most of my mental energy has gone. So like that would be where I'd go if I could.
Nice. I mean, and speaking of a little Marvel and stuff like that, did you hear about Oscar Isaac with Moon Knight?
Yeah. And you know what? Honest to God, I thought it was pretty inspired casting.
I did too. So yeah, I think it's good, man. So, and I love Moon Knight. Mark Spector is pretty awesome. So
yeah, honestly, like Moon Knight falls just out of my top 5 because I'll never be able to afford a copy of Werewolf by Night 32 and have his first appearance. So like he can't be one of my favorites. I've got that first Hawkeye signed by Stan. I've got that first FF signed by Stan. I've got that first Iron Fist signed by Jerry Conway. No, it's Chris Claremont. So yeah, yes. I've got first Black Panther signed by Don McGregor, who did the Jungle Action run with him after he had first appeared. I just, like I said, I've invested a lot of time and energy and money into these characters, and I can't not love them now.
Dude, yeah. That's cool, man. And it's always great to have somebody who's a comic fan that's getting into it and they're doing it for the love. I'm gonna give you some kind of rapid fire. You could go elaborate on some of these if you want to.
All right.
But you could go. So trade or single issue?
I think single issue, not for collecting, but because what I do with comics is, I spend a lot of time thinking about how they're put together and the mechanics behind them. So like taking issue by issue is a better approach to that for me. Like seeing how single issues work. Like if you've read my books, like I'm very interested in how the story plays out over each issue rather than the larger. I mean, like No Heroine was essentially a bunch of connected one shots if you think about it. So like that's definitely more my speed. And digital over print for the studying reasons. I definitely collect print and I love it. I do have a lot of trades though, because I don't like to fuck up my single issues when they're bagged and boarded.
I think the way of media has really lended itself to episodic type of storytelling now to get those climaxes each time, right? It's not just one and it's this big, so that's cool. Favorite con?
Oh man, this is the question I've gotten so many times, and I don't think I have a good answer. It'd be a shorter list of cons I don't like.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously Emerald City, I think that's fantastic. San Diego, it's a hassle, it's a nightmare, but
right.
If you're trying to do comics business or connect with people, like that's the place to be. I love New York. That's my home con. Like I live on the West Coast now, but I lived the first 30 years of my life in New Jersey and would take the train in at like 6 o'clock in the morning, go all 4 days, just get some pizza in the subway or on the Penn Station on the way home. Like that's like a really special place in my heart, and I love working that. I also love the fall in New York. So like any of those three, C2E2 is up there for sure. Like that was the first con I ever worked, so like that's got a special spot in my heart. I mean, like I said, I like
favorite small con then.
favorite small con. I haven't done a ton of small cons, like just economically speaking, like it's
Yeah.
because I live in San Francisco and there's not a lot of cons in California. Like it's always traveling. Like if we're gonna call Rose City a small con, like I'd say it's like a medium.
Yeah.
I like Rose City and Baltimore. They're kind of like the same con on different coasts for me. They'd be my 5 and 6 though.
Yeah, I love Rose City a lot. So it's kind of like not a Reed Pop and it's not San Diego. So
yeah, and it's at the end of the year, so people are a lot chiller and like all
Yeah.
that stuff is behind, and it's fall in Oregon. Like I mean, like it's
in Image's hometown, Oni's hometown, Dark Horse. Like I mean, there's so much right there. It's a mecca of comics.
One of my favorite experiences was when I first started doing comics. I went to Rose City for networking and whatnot, and that was I think the last year Image did like their homecoming.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I
think that's where we met. So
it could have been, but I paid for like the VIP ticket so I could hang out with the creators upstairs, and I had like one-on-one FaceTime with Stevenson, and I was hanging out with Matt Wilson and John Bivens, and I are friends because of that. I mean, so like my wife got to stalk Kelly Sue DeConnick, who she's obsessed with. So like I mean, everybody won. It was a great experience.
Yeah.
I wish they would do that.
I think one of the coolest guys at comics is Mahfood, man. I've got to meet him there. Jim's been a cool dude. So yeah, that was fun. So. I miss cons, man. I miss cons. I love talking.
Me too. I'm getting real tired of this virtual crap. Please keep inviting me, everyone.
Let's go. And what's your so let's look at this. What was your first comic you ever read?
First comic I ever read, some random issue of something, I'm sure, maybe like a Claremont X-Men from the 90s. First comic I ever bought and owned on purpose was it was Spider Boy. It was from the Marvel DC Amalgam universe. I bought it off a spinner rack at a CVS or a Rite Aid. I can't remember. But back when like they were in like pharmacy stores and on spinner racks, it was 1997, so it really wasn't that long ago. But yeah, it was a terrible comic. I still own it. And Spider Boy.
Nice. I think the first one I ever went and picked up at a store was Shadowhawk.
Is that was Valiant? Old school Valiant?
No, that's Image. That's little Jim Valentino.
I was gonna say Jim Valentino. That's what I thought.
Yeah, but it happens. So, what's your favorite underappreciated title?
Kabuki by David Mack. So, like in the late '80s, early '90s, Caliber essentially created like the generation of creators we have in a lot of ways. I mean, Brian Bendis got a start at Caliber. A lot of people don't know that. David Mack, who is doing like title cards for Marvel movies now, I mean, like really blew up. And obviously The Crow and James O'Barr.
Yeah.
And a lot of my favorite comics came out of Caliber in that period because it was indie and like, really not gritty, but like well done dark stories. Like, and you can see, I think, a lot of that influence in some of my book. I mean, No Heroine for sure. But I think Kabuki it's such a good story because it's the cyberpunk Japanese assassin story, but it's also this really great deeper story about like intergenerational mother to daughter trauma, and it really shines in that way. Like The Crow does it for reasons people don't usually appreciate. Like The Crow is everybody's like, he's brooding and he's badass and he kills people. I mean, The Crow is it's a love story. It's about this dude who loved this chick so much that he came back from the dead to avenge her. I mean, and obviously it's badass, but like it's fucking Shakespeare. And like those are the kinds of stories I really like. And Gary Reed, who founded Caliber and found these creators and these stories, like he was the mentor of Travis McIntyre, who runs Source Point Press. So like, I mean, like there's a lot of like synergy and like concentric circles around this for me, but definitely Kabuki is just such a wonderful book.
David Mack's awesome dude too, so that's a good call.
Yeah, I've got you can't see it because my head's in the way, but I got a David Mack original behind me.
Oh yes, dude, that is cool. Yep, and he's the one that kind of got himself fired by getting Brian Michael Bendis over to Marvel. So
yeah, it's funny. Like I've gotten to talk to both of them because I do that now, and I'm not ashamed.
Right.
But originally, David wanted to be a writer, and Brian wanted to be an artist, and they swapping and then working together in that capacity, which it's pretty wild. I mean, that's some fun serendipity bullshit.
Yeah, it's just kind of the cool small world. So favorite guilty pleasure comic?
What does that even mean? I mean, depending on who you ask, like adults in my life and who are in their 30s, my Power Ranger books might be my guilty pleasure, though I speak about it with no guilt.
See, that was the trick question. If you like it, just like it. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I mean,
trick question.
Yeah. I don't know, man. There's some bad comics out there that I might enjoy. But I don't know what they are.
If you like it for something, right? There's something there maybe. So
yeah. Well, there's a couple of arcs of certain books that I love hate. Like I love Straczynski's run on Spider-Man. Like I think it's probably peak Spider-Man. It's what was coming out when I really got into comics like in a big way. But it's always going to be end capped by One More Day, like this really not great Spider-Man story. But I also love it because it's part of this great run. And he also did a story that really messed with the Gwen Stacy mythos in a way that's like kind of vulgar, and like I hate that story, but I also love this run. So like it's a whole thing. Yeah, I got my Gwen Stacy action figure behind me. She's my favorite. My other David Mack original is a Gwen Stacy. So like that, I really have feelings about that arc.
That's awesome. And so let's go. What's the first book that made you cry?
I'll let you know. Know.
Oh.
Well, not that I'm like a man's man right now, but I don't cry like at funerals or when people die or anything like that. And I think that's like a deficiency in me.
Yeah.
There have been things that have choked me up, but like it's never in my adult life, as far back as I can remember, like gone to the point of tears.
Thanks.
But reading Sex Criminals has made me laugh to the point of tears. So like that's like a sideways answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are definitely some sad books. I mean, Kabuki is one of them. The Crow is one of them.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look around the room and see what else is on the shelf.
See if something else. Dead End Kids.
Yeah, DMZ I think actually hit me pretty hard. I read that for the first time recently, and like I devoured 60 issues of it in like a week. And that it's just Brian Wood is Brian Wood, and it is what it is.
Love Brian Wood.
Yeah. Demo, one of his early books with Becky Cloonan, was a big influence for grief. Like it was this idea that you could tell these genre stories and like kind of slice of life things, but also have these really bigger emotional stories behind them. And like 100%, like The Crow and Demo were definitely where grief came from. The dove on the cover of Grief is actually a reference to The Crow. In the special edition of The Crow, which is somewhere on the shelf behind me. But Obar put out an extended version of it 5 or 10 years ago with like new art and kind of little revisions. And there's a story about like a scene where the Crow, whatever his real name is, I can't remember. He's on a train and he's watching this really beautiful white horse run alongside the train, and then the train pulls ahead of it, and as he's looking back, the horse gets caught in this barbed wire fence. And that image of like this really majestic white animal getting caught in the barbed wire is 100% where the cover of Grief came from.
I like it. I can see that now, and especially when you have that second print cover. So
yeah.
Yep. When the bird changes colors. So
yeah, haven't seen it in person yet. Can't wait.
No, that'll be awesome. And so here's one that may be difficult for you. Okay.
I'm ready.
You guys got to kind of know Frank to get this one that has some impact. And this is not saying this is not saying you're a bad writer, but this is saying if you wanted to become a better writer, would you give up pumpkin spice latte?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, all I see is tweets of pumpkin spice latte this time of year from you.
Listen, I am a big believer in loving what you love, and I love me some pumpkin spice flavored everything. Like, I mean, it's a delicious flavor. Would I give it up to be Alan Moore? Fuck yes.
Okay. Okay.
Because they're still chocolate, and they're still like
they're
still potato chips. Since I know that giving it up isn't going to help me, I won't. And I actually did have to. We were talking about this before we started recording, but being stuck in the house and not being able to go to the gym has not been awesome for my health. So this year I've had to kind of slow my roll on the lattes because they're a solid 400 calories a piece and it's mostly sugar. But it's also been warm. Like it's still in the 60s and 70s here in San Francisco during the day, and it's almost November. So I've been doing more of the pumpkin cold brews, which have fewer calories.
Okay, harm reduction. Harm reduction is a good thing.
Exactly.
Yes.
Everyone watching, love what you love and enjoy that shit because you're gonna die someday, and then when you're dead, you're not gonna be able to drink no pumpkin spice lattes again. So just drink up.
Yeah, we'll pour one out for you though.
Yeah. They make pumpkin spice liqueur now, so you can just pour that on my grave.
It'll soak through, man. Yes. And so when we're looking ahead at Dead End Kids, I mean, January 2021. So when is the pre-order up on that?
So it's actually open now. It opened a couple days ago, I guess, like the last week of the previous month and the whole month. So it's like a 5-week window. So you can order Dead End Kids, the Suburban Job #1 right now. Any comic shop in the world, anywhere in the world. Just tell them, Dead End Kids, Dead End Kids, the Suburban Job. Just give them whatever. I think the first book gave me enough name notoriety that you could probably just say Dead End Kids and they'll be able to figure it out. But yeah, it's first issue's out in January. It's going to run for 4 issues. So we'll run through April, and by then we'll be talking about the next book. But yeah, if you like the first book, this is more of all that goodness. But if you missed the first book or didn't read it yet, it's a fresh start. No required reading to dive in. And I, like I was saying earlier, I definitely think this is the better of the 2 books for a number of reasons. But like I was saying, it's 9/11 is this thing that really it impacted everyone. Like, yeah, I have friends in other countries who the way they fly on planes is changed, and it's sort of my hallmark watershed moment of like modern terrorism becoming a thing, and we still live under the specter of it in a lot of ways. But I want to like emphasize that this isn't a book about 9/11. Like, one of the things I said to myself was, I don't want to make tragedy porn. I don't want to make this book and have it be successful and make a bunch of money off of suffering. This is a book about kids dealing with sort of the fallout some years later, and a lot of what I saw in my own life when I was a little bit older after it happened, and a lot of what I think a lot of people also saw. It's the world changed, and a lot of people were impacted in a really big, hard, bad way, and this is digging into it and in a way that is respectful. It's not preachy. Like, there's obviously some stuff to do with race because Amna's Pakistani American, and Brian's sister is in the military, so there's some political stuff in there, but it really is. It's not preachy. It's not about that. It's about these kids and what they're going through and what it's like to be young and suffer with these really big things at a time when you're not emotionally and mentally equipped for them, and what it's like to do that alone. How hard that can be. It's also a badass heist story. Like, it's 3 kids in suburbia trying to pull off a heist, and watching them do it without all of the shit that the Ocean's 11 crew had, tech and money and cars and shit. Like, that's a lot of fun. So I mean, I'm absolutely proud in every way of this book, and I think people really like it. And I hope you guys will check it out.
It's got a great cliffhanger at the end of #1. It was very good read. I appreciate the PDF to get an early look at it, to let everybody know that this is a book that I if I don't like it, I'll say it, but I like it. So I think it's a good one to continue on. So, and your books have been known to also have some really pretty damn nice covers. We talked earlier offline about the metal cover of No Heroine. How many are we going to see on this one?
So I was putting together the trade for No Heroine not that long ago, and when we got to the cover gallery portion, like, it ended up being 25 individual covers, not counting like Virgin versus trade or metal versus paper. And that, to me, like, as much as I love working with other artists and I like having these opportunities to work with retailers, that felt like a lot. And like, I definitely saw some people who were big fans of the book, like, struggling with that. They couldn't get all the covers because some were limited and rare. So I wanted to kind of think about like what we could do to do exclusive covers and incentive covers and stuff like that, and make it a little more, a smaller scale, but still really high quality. So we did a couple things. On No Heroine, we did my first incentive cover. We did the 1 in 5 incentive cover by Ben Templesmith. That was huge hit. I mean, like, still have people asking me if they can get copies of it, which
Love that dude's work.
Well, then you'll be very happy to know that we've got him back for one of our covers. But this time around, I'm always looking for ways to kind of scale up and put to use things we learned last time. So we're doing 1 in 5 covers for all the issues of Dead End Kids, the Suburban Job. They're all by Ryan Kincaid, who did some really great covers for No Heroine. He's doing some great stuff at DC with Punchline and Harley Quinn. And this is a little bit outside his normal space. He's doing some really cool stuff. But him and Wes Hartman is on colors, and it's 4 1-in-5 covers, one for each issue, and they're connecting. So they'll come together to make one larger image when everything's done. Right before we hopped on, I got to see the colors for the last 2 covers. We did them at the same time because it was a little easier for Wes. But the image is stunning and really just gorgeous. So I'm really excited for the last issue to come out in April so people can finally see it all together. So we've got the 1-in-5 covers. And then, like I was saying, we got Ben back for a 1-in-10 cover this time around. So for every 10 copies of retailer orders, you can get 1 copy of the Ben Templesmith cover. What the fuck am I doing? I have actual copies of it. I can be showing you this shit. All right.
Let's see this beauty.
Yeah, so this is the main cover A by Chris Madden, who's back from the original series, interior artist for No Heroine. Like I was saying, we kept the format, the template the same, but we kind of did some stuff with silhouettes and different yellows coming in. It's not like a strictly brown cover. So you can expect more of this for the next 3 covers. Let's see, I got a big pile of shit here. Here is the first of 4 Kincaid and Hartman covers. So we went with a sort of minimal trade dress up top. Everything's flipped on this camera. And they'll connect, like this, 2 across and then 2 down. So it's like a tall rectangle. And it'll create one larger image. So this is Amna, our Pakistani American character. And each cover will feature one of the main characters, and then one will feature our bad guy, Ray Ray. So this is the 1-in-5 cover for issue 1, and then the cover I was just talking about, the 1-in-10 by Ben Templesmith. This is probably my favorite cover for any book I've ever done. I think Ben's super talented. This book right here captures so much of the drama of the book. It's it uses that 9/11 imagery, but like in a understated way that's not again, like tragedy porn, really just kind of like highlighting that, I think that this cover tells you everything you need to know about this book. If you know what Dead End Kids means, like if you read the first volume, this is the perfect marketing material. And it's, it's a Ben Templesmith cover. Like I'm super excited to always get to work with Ben. It's gotten to a point where, every few months I shoot him an email. I'm like, hey, Ben, I'm doing a book. Would you be up for doing a cover? PayPal ready, bro. And then I don't hear back from him for like a week. And then, one morning I wake up and suddenly I have like thumbnails in my inbox. He didn't even say, yes, he's got to do it. He just sends me the thumbnail. And then I pick a thumbnail and like a few days later, I've got the cover. And it's just, Ben's great like that. Incredible gentleman in a class of his own, especially amongst comic folk. And just incredibly down to earth. Like, I mean, for the dude who, did 30 Days a Night, like, this epic, mythic book in comics, like he's just really approachable. I mean, he's working with a schmuck like me, so like it's, maybe this is more about where his career has gone than me, but I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So those are the incentive covers for retailers. So any comic shop in the world can order these covers. We have a few retailer exclusive covers. Not all of that's locked in yet, but we have a couple retail partners that I can talk about. Trinity Comics, who did a really nice set of Heroine covers, is back for a set of 1 through 4 of Dead End Kids Suburban Job. These will be thematically linked, not connecting, but they'll look like a set, but they'll all stand on their own. So if you get number 1, if you get number 4, they'll all be really, really great. And I'm going to butcher the guy's name, but Igor. I'm not even going to try and say his last name, but we were working with a different artist this time around, Trinity. Last time we had Zoe Lachey. She was amazing. Igor, insert last name here, is going to be awesome as well. And then we're doing a set with El Rey Comics, who did like a really killer cover for Disaster Inc. for Aftershock. And Adrian, the owner there, is a buddy of mine. I really wanted to work with them. So we've got Joseph Schmackley. Oh, God, I'm terrible with last names. But he does a lot with Scout, and he did a really cool No Heroine cover, real Sex Pistols punk rock vibe to it. He's back for a set. That'll be a connecting set that he and I are kind of dreaming up together, and he's going to draw and color, and it's going to be awesome. And then Exchange Comics and Collectibles, which has done covers for all my books so far, has Esteban Salinas on a set of covers there. The Esteban did a really nice set for Dead End Kids Volume 1. That was kind of like a David Fincher kind of Hannibal-esque kind of thing. Those are some of my favorite covers. And we're kind of brainstorming like what the new version of that will be, and that'll be pretty cool. So, like we're really focused on curating like really great sets of books for the people who want to get all four, but also books that stand on their own, but also while scaling down the number of covers and making it I mean, I had to put together a spreadsheet of the No Heroin covers, and that if I have to do that, the average reader who's trying to collect them is not going to have an easier time. So I wanted to, keep the readers in mind and stuff like that, and put out better stuff, but less of it.
They've been pretty awesome all the time that I've seen. I know that you posted a cool picture of all of, I believe they were the Dead and Kids comics everywhere.
Yeah.
That was the complete collection. And so, I mean, go follow Frank at Twitter so you can see all of those. So I believe that's your handle right there on your name, right?
At Frank Gogol, FrankGogol. That's Twitter, that's Instagram. I have a Facebook. Page, but it's it's bullshit. Like they don't get you anything. I have a profile though. If you want to shoot me a friend request, if you want to write your own comics, or you like my books, or you want to talk shit about John, please connect with me. As long as you don't have like a swastika floating up in your profile picture, I'll give most people a chance. That's just /Frank Gogol. I got all the good URLs. It's just all my name /Frank Gogol. Yeah, except for my email. Somebody got, when I was 14 and I needed to make a Gmail account, somebody had swooped in and got Frank Gogol and Frank.Gogol. So it's bullshit. Follow me on social media. Whatever your preference is. I do a newsletter. That's definitely the best place to check out stuff. There's one going out tomorrow. It'll have the cover for Dead End Kids Suburban Job #2 in it, way in advance. I try to make that worthwhile. So if you head over to my Twitter, Instagram, or wherever, there's links to sign up for that. And you get the free first copy of, get for free the first issue of Dead End Kids Volume 1 to check out.
That's awesome. So definitely worth doing it. Sign up for that email list there, the newsletter, and definitely be pre-ordering everything. So
that's right.
It helps the books tremendously for the pre-orders. So, and comic shops too. They need to know what they need to order and how much they need to order. So help a local comic shop out.
Most people don't realize this, but most comic shops live the business equivalent of paycheck to paycheck, Wednesday to Wednesday, huge cash.
The shop itself, not the employees. The shop.
No. But for having business capital, they get huge infusions every Wednesday, and when you pre-order books, that helps them know what their bank accounts will look like in advance. It also helps with numbers. It also makes sure you get the book. Dead End Kids Volume 1, #1 came out about a year and change ago, and nobody knew who I was, and I'd never done a miniseries, and the book ended up going for $40 and $50 on eBay for 8 or 9 weeks. You still can't get a copy for probably less than $10. But now you're watching this, you know who I am. You know that the book's coming out, so you can pay $4 to pre-order it now, or you can pay $40 on eBay later. That seems like really simple math.
Yep.
Assuming that the book does well. Yeah. I'm not gonna say it's going to,
because we can't expect to have a con to see Frank out at a con, work in the Source Point press booth or his own writer's booth. So you can't expect that anymore. So you got to kind of get it up front. So,
hey, did we talk about the No Heroin trade? We did, right?
We did. Yes, we definitely did. Pre-order.
So that is also a pre-order alongside Dead End Kids, the Suburban Job #1. So if you missed out on No Heroin, or you want to reread it without fucking up your single issues, pre-order that. $10.
Yep. Make sure you're on it. Yeah. So 3 trades out for you coming up soon. Another book. So, careers starting to take off, man. I'm really happy to have you on. I know we've talked about, the last 3 books on here, and I appreciate that, man.
So. Listen, everyone always thanks me for coming on these things. And while I'm flattered, and I'm great and all, you took time out of your night, to let me talk about my thing and give me a platform. This is your audience, and you're, like I said, it's your Wednesday night. I'm sure you'd rather be reading some Valiant right now, but I appreciate you taking the time and the hard work you put into Hoodoo TV. It's been awesome watching it grow. I remember when it was just like an outright geekery thing in the beginning, and now you're doing your own thing, and that's awesome. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, hopefully it'll keep growing. Planning on doing some more things. Just life with COVID's been pretty damn busy for me, but and it's always great to see people, better themselves, do their career, and hopefully big things. I love hearing that you got a bunch of things ready out there, and basically just sitting there ready for the world to consume. So
man, grind or die. Just get out there and do it or don't.
Awesome. Dude, again, thank you. And I want to thank anybody who watched this. Make sure you're hitting subscribe. Make sure you're following Frank, all those different social media platforms. And we will be chatting again, whether it's Get Valiant or Hoodoo TV review or a live interview. So thanks, everybody, for jumping on. We appreciate it.